Good afternoon and welcome to the Carolina Codecast, the official podcast of the Carolina Code Conference. With me today is Pete Broderick. Say hello, Pete.
Hey, how's it going, Barry? Thanks for having me.
It's going great. Yeah. Thank you for coming on the show. Glad to have you here. So tell us about yourself. What you up to these days? What are you doing work-wise, family-wise? Where are you living?
All right.
Let the audience know who you are.
Yeah, so I've been working as a software developer for about 20 years and running a business, a custom software agency called Simply Binary for the last 14 years. And I'm in Traveler's Rest. And yeah, and I've lived here with my wife and two kids. I have a 14-year-old boy and an 8-year-old boy.
Nice. That you're sounding pretty busy overall.
I am quite busy.
So 14 years, that would be 2009? No, 2010.
2009. So he was born in August 2009, yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's start with the business, I guess, then. So Simply Binary. Now, tell us a little bit about what Simply Binary does and how long you've been in Greenville and kind of how it came to be.
Oh, I guess we got to go all the way back. So my older son is 14 and Simply Binary is 14. And that's no coincidence. So we found out we were going to have a kid, I guess around 15 years ago. And I grew up with parents that both owned businesses, was surrounded by that my whole life and I was pretty certain that was going to be my path, but at the time I was working for a business and was quickly on the track to get those golden handcuffs, I would say. So when we found out Riley was coming along, I decided to save up some money and take the plunge and pursue that. Luckily, my first employer kind of set me up with the skills to make that happen. It was kind of a sink or swim sort of situation in college where I got a job my sophomore year as a software developer, and the senior developer that was there promptly left within the first year. And so it was up to me to really run the ship and figure things out. So I buckled down and did that, and then really just learned, the whole, I kind of had the software stuff down because I had studied computer science in high school and then all throughout college. I had done a bunch of freelancing in college, building websites and PHP and things like that. But where I was really lacking was, on the source control and working with other people and the operational side of things, setting up servers and that sort of stuff. So I learned all of those skills, and really it just set me up to be able to completely develop a web application and deploy it and manage it. So that would be...
We have very similar paths in that regard. That's actually my son being born was one of the it's time to go start a company moments for me as well. And so that's why Brightball started around the exact same time.
Yeah, that can be a 15, strong impetus.
Brightball's been since 1 year before. So, yeah, it's funny how that works. It was a very similar thing. My dad had his own practice growing up and everything too. And you just get used to having your kids grow up around that, and you have a hard time imagining what it would be like otherwise. But
super thankful
that's
to
cool.
be in that environment growing up and being able to watch all that happen.
Yeah, it definitely influences you for sure. And so, getting the opportunity to be thrown in the fire, always a great learning experience. Tell that to everybody. I've one of the random bits of wisdom that I've gotten is jumping into bad situations or situations where there's not enough people to do the work is one of the best ways to build experience in a short period of time.
Absolutely.
So, something to keep in mind. It sounds like you handled it well so far, though. So when you started Simply Binary, were you in Greenville?
No, I was in Northern Virginia in a suburb called Chantilly. So
Okay.
I was about 30 to 40 minutes outside of DC.
Okay.
So it's a big.
And so what brought you down to Greenville? When did you get down this way?
So we built up. Go back a little bit more. So I did with Simply Binary. It started out as my freelance, my freelance gig, and eventually I convinced Justin to join me, and we partnered up. And he had really made a name for himself in the military health space, and so he was starting to get bid as key on different contracts. And so I convinced him to leave his employer and join up with me. And we've been together ever since, started multiple businesses together at this point. We both we joined up in 2011. And then in 2014, we were really just trying to find a place to grow our families. I had Riley at that point. He was married to Catherine, and they were planning to start a family. And so we had kind of looked around the outskirts of Northern Virginia, moving a little bit west, and it was just, being an hour and a half outside of DC and still extraordinarily expensive. And we had fortunately put ourselves into a position where we didn't need to go into any offices. We were fully remote and could be anywhere. And so we started just kind of throwing a dart and checking places out. And actually, I was at a neighborhood concert. We lived in this big, massive neighborhood with like 20,000 residents. And so they'd throw concerts and you'd get to meet people. And so I met a couple that was moving to Greenville. And I had no idea. I was like, there's a Greenville in like every state. So I pried, and they told me that it looked great and that there was a kind of budding tech environment there. He was more in the financial industry, which was interesting. So I just started researching, and I can't remember what website I found. And it kind of highlighted one of the co-working spaces that was here at the time, but I just thought it looked really cool. And so I convinced Lindsay, my wife, to come check it out with me. And we just came down, the two of us, and checked it out. Got away for the weekend, had a great time. And then we came back with Justin and Catherine and spent a little while here checking it out. They fell in love with it. And then I was just trying to figure out where in the surrounding area we wanted to live. And we both settled on Travelers Rest, and now we live right across the street from each other.
Nice. So I'm going to have to back up a second, though.
Okay.
You were in a neighborhood with 20,000 people? That's like a city. How does that even work?
Yeah, it's pretty
I'm trying
wild.
to understand the logistics, and my head's exploding.
Yeah, it was a neighborhood that actually had its own, I guess, town name. So it would be South Riding, Virginia, instead of Chantilly. But yeah, it was interesting. It was a cool neighborhood. I could walk out the door to several pools and bring the kids there, and we could just walk there. There's a Starbucks in the neighborhood. There's a Harris Teeter and another 2 grocery stores in the neighborhood.
That is crazy. I've never even heard of such a thing.
So you had townhouses and apartment buildings, and maybe like up to half-acre lots with pretty big houses in that neighborhood. So it had the whole thing, and it was set up so that you didn't really have to leave for anything.
Nice. I feel like I'm going to have to go research that now. As soon as I tell Christy about that, later tonight, she's going to immediately get interested in trying to figure out how all this works. So,
Yeah, look it up. South Riding, Virginia. It's an interesting place.
All right, I'll check it out. So, yeah, not to stay focused on that too long. I just had to ask. So, you're clearly juggling a lot. You know, you've got the business, you've got the family with the kids growing up and everything. So, what's it like balancing all that? Because I know y'all stay pretty busy. From we talked about this a little bit ahead of time. You've got two boys really into sports and everything as well.
Right.
How does that all work?
Yeah. So there's a lot to juggle on the day-to-day, and really the way I do it is using systems and routines. I have a very regimented day, and my work day spans about 12 hours. And now I'm not working that whole time, but in order to not sacrifice family time, which is really important to me, I get up around 5 in the morning. I work a session before my younger son gets up. That's about 2 hours long. Then I go wake him up, and we do, breakfast, school time, or, I take him over to school. I work out after that, and then I have another work block, and it just kind of carries on, bouncing back and forth between work and exercise until about 5 p.m. and then I shut it down. Often I'll hang out with my younger son for a bit when he gets home from school. We might go skateboard in the driveway or something like that. And then it's back to work for a little bit. Family time all throughout the evening. Our older son, Riley, he's just at school, until 6 to 7 every day. He's a student athlete, 3-sport athlete. So I get to spend time with him from dinner until bedtime. That's about it.
Yep. That's familiar. My son took up wrestling over the last few months, and he's been getting home at 7:45 every night. And
we haven't run into you yet at wrestling. He's a freshman as well.
Yes, he is.
Yeah. So Riley's a freshman wrestler as well.
Oh, nice.
So
okay.
We have a very similar schedule right now, I imagine.
Yep. Sounds like it. So the regimenting of your schedule is something that I've seen you talking about a lot more online, and you've sort of become, I'm gonna put this out there, the unofficial fitness spokesperson for the tech community in Greenville. If you're watching at home, or if you're actually watching this on YouTube or the video, you can see Pete. Pete is a very fit individual, just right here on the camera, and you can tell that he always has been. And
appreciate that.
And it's one of my first impressions of you was, "Dadgum, you're in good shape," and I'm suddenly feeling like really out of shape. So, whenever there was a stint where we were going over to one of the CrossFit places in Greenville,
right?
For a while,
Swamp Rabbit.
That was great. You seem to be a local legend over there.
Oh, I wouldn't say that, but yeah, that was a great place. I was there for a long time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, recently shut down, but yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I don't really know the reasoning, so I can't speak to that. But what I do know is that the coaches over there are fantastic, and they have their own thing going. They're starting a new gym, and I believe, but they do plan, they're going to be launching a gym downtown, which will be really awesome. And unfortunately, it's right across from the office that we no longer have. So yeah, it's going to be right there in that
Noma Square Main Street area. For a long time there. Yep. So, you mentioned earlier also when you were talking about your regiment that you work, you took the kids to school, and then you work out, and then you get back to work. And then after that, you mentioned that it's sort of alternating work and exercise between that. So what does the full day workout schedule look like? Like, how long are you doing between gaps and working out, and how much are you doing any given day?
So right now right now I'm doing this 100-day challenge, and it really, the only rule is that I exercise every day. The only exercise rule is just exercising every day. But I typically will lift weights 6 days a week and run six days a week. And then it overlaps so that I don't ever not exercise any given day. I'm lifting weights for about an hour and running for between 30 minutes and 2 hours, depending on what the schedule calls for.
Nice.
The longer sessions are almost always on the weekend.
What is this 100-day challenge called?
It is called my 100-day challenge. So it's something I made up, and I think in 2017 at Swamp Rabbit CrossFit we did the Whole Life Challenge, which is it's like 30 to 45 days of clean eating. There's a meditation component. There's water. There's getting adequate sleep, stretching. Just doing things that would benefit your whole life. Hence the name. And it was really enjoyable, and I could see tons of changes and benefits from doing that. So then the next year I didn't have that same crew interested in doing it again with me. So I just kind of ran it again on my own, but made up some different rules for some things that I wanted to work on. I think I ran it again for about 30 days. And then ever since then I've been doing it for 100 days. So I think starting in 2019, I did it for 100 days. I did quit one time, 2020. I basically found out that everything was hitting the fan and needed some pizza.
Yeah, it's funny how that works. So with a 100-day challenge that's kind of your own rules, how do you stay accountable? Because a lot of times people do these challenges because they want a group of people who are doing it to kind of hold each other accountable and hold them to the standard.
I think accountability was important. Definitely that first time with the Whole Life Challenge. I have my wife and my kids seeing me do this every day. So there's some base level accountability there. And then this year, I'm just reporting my weekly summary on LinkedIn, which is some level of accountability. And I would, this is my 6th year doing it. So I would just say at this point, it's not difficult for me. So I don't really need that layer of accountability. But I think when you're getting started doing something like this, it is really helpful.
At this point, it's just part of your routine. Right?
Yeah. And it's very close to just how I live my everyday life anyway. It's just I would usually have a cheat meal on the weekends if I felt like it. Though it's not really a cheat meal. It's just, a 90-10, 80-20 sort of thing where most of the time I eat very clean, avoid sugar, avoid alcohol, and all that stuff.
Good sense. It's a lesson we could all take, probably.
So the rules I'm running right now are I have to be up by 5:30 in the morning. I actually get up at 5. And then I journal every day. I exercise. I create some amount of content. So I'm writing, crafting LinkedIn posts, other sort of simply binary things. We're doing things like client spotlights, that sort of stuff. And then
So what are you doing in your journaling? I'm a little curious to ask about that.
So I'm just doing freeform journaling, just whatever, getting stuff off my mind, really. So I'm not following any sort of cues. I have a minimum of like 2 minutes, so it doesn't take long at all. But really, a lot of it is just whatever's on my mind. How yesterday went tends to come up a lot.
Nice.
I also, as part of that, I have this like habit template thing that's separate from this that I fill out. And part of that is I do 3 things of gratitude. And it could be any amount of sentences. It could be one sentence. It could just be simple as like Lindsay. But yeah, I just say 3 things I'm grateful for, and then I dive into the free form. So that's the journaling.
So you've got I'll let you continue on the structural pieces in a minute. You got to talk during HackGreenville Nights, and HackGreenville Nights, they have 4 speakers up, 2 in each room, going side by side. At the first one they had back in October, and if I recall, you actually gave a talk kind of about the structures and systems of your within your life, right?
I did. Unfortunately, so that talk was kind of a byproduct of my blog, in a sense, system level thinking, where it was kind of a combination of multiple things that I had written. So I don't remember exactly what the content was, but I'm guessing the gist of it was basically crafting a vision for your life and breaking that vision down into goals, and those goals down into systems and weekly actionable things that move you towards those goals. So I imagined that was it. And it was probably around how to slowly build discipline, which is really a skill. It's not a trait that just some people have. It's something that you can build up piece by piece over time, and turn yourself into a disciplined person.
Okay. So let's actually jump into that then. Turning yourself into a disciplined person. Obviously, I mean, you've got a routine that you're doing on a daily basis. You've got journaling. You've got a lot of structure to your day that helps you to manage everything. You've got built-in workout routines. You're doing these 100-day challenges that you're kind of self-managing to keep yourself on task and on top of everything that you're juggling with client needs and projects that you're building internally yourself. How did you start doing all this? What drove you to start doing all this?
I want to say it happened out of necessity. You either, if you make yourself as busy as I am and have as much responsibility and obligation, it's either you fail at doing it or you figure out a way. And so I want to say I figured out a way that will work for a lot of people, but it definitely works for me. And so, yeah, it's just kind of born out of necessity.
Okay. All right. So you're basically part of that 5 a.m. club. I've heard that referenced as in terms of people really starting their day early that way. What time are you getting to sleep every night to do that, to feel well rested enough to do that?
So admittedly, I'm not getting enough sleep. I need to get a little bit more. I'm on about the 7-hour plan. So about 10 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah. I should be in the 9 o'clock range, but I have this cute dog and he needs some hangout time and kind of settle down time. He's 2 years old and he wants to be on the couch snuggling with daddy, from 9 to 10. And so it's really hard to pull away from. So usually right now, we're watching a basketball game or something, snuggling on the couch, and then we shut it down. But
yeah, our dogs have a way of deciding that they need some extra attention around 3 o'clock in the morning. It's
oh gosh,
pretty rough that way. So 7 hours of consistent sleep every now and then would be great. But yeah, I mean the structure and everything. It sounds wonderful. I imagine if you're controlling your diet well and you're controlling your routine this well, are you a coffee drinker? Are you getting caffeine as part of this? Is there a structure for kind of regimenting that in your life? Because I'm in the process of reading a book called Why We Sleep.
I've read that book.
It kind of breaks down the chemical changes that happen in your body based on various things like caffeine and melatonin, your sleep cycles and how they adjust and circadian rhythm. It's a really interesting book. But highly recommend it. I'll include a link to it in the show notes. But so that just gets me curious. Anybody who's able to consistently get up early and get to sleep on time, you've got a pretty solid body clock going at that point. So what is the... I
highly recommend listening to any of Matthew Walker's stuff. There's so much content out there about that book as well, but it's a good book. I drink caffeine probably too much. I would say I'd like to think I am one of those people that has a very high caffeine metabolism. And so it doesn't, from what I can tell, it doesn't affect my sleep. And I've worn a Whoop strap for a number of years. I don't have one right now, but it didn't seem like caffeine was really interfering. And I have given it up for an extended period of time. And I just like coffee. It doesn't give me more energy. You just end up kind of at your baseline. So if you give it up, your baseline just goes up higher. And if you drink coffee, you have to drink coffee to get to your baseline. But as long as you're as long as you're ingesting caffeine, you'll get there. That's what I've found.
We recently just switched to decaf.
Okay.
And I never thought I would ever drink decaf. I always made fun of people who drink decaf coffee. Just kind of as the what's the point. But it turns out decaf still has about 30% of the caffeine. It's not caffeine free. It's just lower caffeine. Mm-hmm. And so you can still get your enjoyment of having that morning cup of coffee without being jittery if you have, a second cup. And that seems to be working well for us. We've been doing that for the last couple weeks or so. And we both have found we're actually sleeping better at night, which is great.
Oh, nice. How long was your, did you have any bad effects from the detox?
No, well, because I haven't fully detoxed.
Okay.
I have fully quit caffeine a couple of times before in the past when I was drinking just excessive over the top levels. I mean, there were times in my life when I was drinking so much caffeine throughout the day that giving it up I experienced legitimate withdrawal symptoms on like the third day. Like I was physically ill.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
But with this, I mean, it was just sort of a gradual downturn. We initially, before we switched to decaf, we started doing the Folgers half calf. So it was kind of a step to that because especially during cold months, when I'm sitting here in front of the computer all day, I don't run the heat when it's just me here at the house working by myself because it's just a waste of energy. And so it'll be a little bit chillier and I'll enjoy my warm cup of coffee and I'll drink coffee kind of through noon. I might have 3 or 4 cups in the morning. And that was when I kind of realized, we need to cut back on that caffeine a little bit. And so cutting back to half calf, it was like having 2 cups, even though I had 4, and we just kind of kept sipping it throughout the entire morning. And so now with decaf, it's even lower. And really just, as long as you just drink a lot of water, I hate to, jump on the Stanley Cup trend. My daughter got me into this thing, and I love it.
Yeah, my wife has a few of those.
I drink a lot more water with it, toting it around everywhere. And I can't believe I'm going to say this, but it does actually taste better out of the Stanley Cup. I don't know why.
The old Contigo bottles.
Oh, nice. Well, I if you can afford, the $700 Stanley Cups or whatever they're going for on eBay these days, I don't know how they became such a crazy trend. They are pretty good. I used to do one of those Turvis tumblers before, but any of it works. Just getting a lot more water seems to kind of balance things out well, and will stave off most of the effects. If you aren't drinking a lot more water while trying to get off of caffeine, you probably are going to have some symptoms. And I've given it up for extended periods of time, a couple different points. But what usually ends up happening, especially in this field, and you hope it doesn't happen, but every now and then you're going to have to do something late at night on a website or a computer or something like that, where you need to do it after business hours for a customer, or you need to, upgrade a database and it's going to be offline for a few minutes. And so you've just got to do it outside of normal operating hours. So you might find yourself up at 2:00 in the morning. And the moment that you have that, the moment you have a short night's sleep, the next day you're going to start having caffeine again. and even if you were cold turkey and you were off of it for a while, it's going to come back. And I think I fully gave up caffeine like 3 different times for, maybe 3 to 6 months at various different times when I gave it up. And it was fine. After the first week or so, it was much easier. You start eating an apple for breakfast and it has just about the same effect, and drinking a lot of water, and you feel fine. You don't really need it. But like you, I really like the taste of Coke. And so every now and then I want a Coke Zero.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy my coffee. I don't put anything in my coffee anymore. I just drink it black now, but I like my warm beverage, especially on cold mornings. And yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same way. When I'm not doing this challenge, then every few weeks I'll have a soda, and like we don't have any of that at home, but I just really enjoy it. And I'll go
at some point.
I'll go full sugar with it.
You're not cutting it out because you just like it. You're cutting out something that you like. You just have to moderate effectively.
Right.
And not keeping it at the house does a really good job of moderating. And I'll only get them every now and then when I'm out somewhere. But
yeah, so part of the challenge is also not eating really clean, not having sugar, not drinking alcohol as well. And when you eat that way, you end up being really low on sodium. And so I have to come up with ways to mitigate that. So I start my day with 24 ounces of sodium infused water with magnesium as well. I'll either use something called pickleball or Element. And they're little powders that you pour into your drink.
Now, magnesium is also supposed to help with your sleep cycles as well.
Very much so.
Like, it doesn't knock you out, but it just helps to kind of regulate things a little bit more. So it's good to hear that you're doing that. I actually started taking a magnesium supplement myself, and it helps. But I'm also still, I've got to lose like 30 pounds.
Well, are you and Reese still going to the CrossFit gym in Easley?
No, we were, and then he started wrestling, and that kind of cut into that immediately.
That sport.
So when he wasn't doing wrestling, he was done with school at 3:30.
Yeah,
and then he could come back, and we could go to the 4:30 class or something like that, and or worst case, go to one a little bit later, right after that, right at 6 o'clock. But with needing to pick him up from wrestling at like 7, and it became a little more complicated. And he's about to, wrestling season's just about over, and he's going to be jumping into pole vaulting right then.
Oh wow, that's awesome!
Can't help the dad jokes every now and then. But all right, let's slide back onto some other topics here. So at HackGreenville Nights, how did you like the event?
I thought it was awesome. I can't wait for the next one. It was a great turnout. Jim ran a great event. Thought it was very well organized. The food was great. So many people contributed by making food, which is awesome. Multiple sponsors were.
I have not seen that in an event before.
Yeah, and I think the next one, it's entirely going to be homemade food, which is really cool.
That is really cool. That's one of the things that kind of they had like a taco bar out there, and they had all these different ingredients. You could make your own taco bar, and people made different salsas and stuff. And it was, if you go to a lot of tech events, usually it involves, if there's going to be food at the event, if it's an after hours event, usually it involves just kind of getting a big order of something from somewhere. It's perfectly normal. You're getting some pizzas or getting some subs or bowls or something like that. Which is great. They're all great, but I've never seen everybody who was coming actually, the organizers really take that much time to and care in putting together a menu like that. And it was really, really good food.
Yeah, it was.
So I'm looking forward to the next one too.
It sounded like the next one might be like a chili cook-off type deal. I could be wrong about that, but
interesting.
So I'm excited about that. I love chili.
That's going to be dangerous with everybody in small rooms talks after that.
Could be.
I guess. Yeah. So Speaking of HackGreenville Nights, I know y'all have gotten involved in kind of sponsoring some of those events, as well as sponsoring some of the various local meetup groups. I'm talking Simply Binary here.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all ran Upstate Elixir and Upstate Ruby for a while.
We did.
I think you're still running Upstate Ruby. I don't know if Elixir's still going or not, but
still exists. We haven't done any events in a long time, but it's still on Meetup.com. If that's what counts.
Well, you've also actively sponsored the Carolina Code Conference since the very first one. And so what made you want to get Simply Binary involved as a sponsor in the local tech scene? And have you found it to be beneficial for Simply Binary itself, just sort of in the community and brand recognition or anything else?
Yeah. So when we were in the DC area, both Justin and I would frequently go out to a few different Ruby meetups, and it was just a fantastic networking opportunity. We just really enjoyed them. So when we moved here, we pretty much started Upstate Ruby right away. And I think it really just started out as kind of an outlet and a way to meet other developers that were interested in the same language, and kind of just grew from there. It's definitely a great community builder. We have won work and found employees and all that sort of stuff from doing it, but it's never been like a pushed reason or a marketing effort of ours, though. It ends up being that way.
Just trying to support the local community in general.
Right. Yeah.
Got it. Well, the local community appreciates it. I can definitely tell you that.
Yeah,
y'all are definitely one of the people that helped get the conference.
I remember I said my son would pop in at some point. Here he is.
Yep, you're good. You're good.
No thanks, bud.
Okay. Bye.
He was offering me some Reese's Pieces.
Oh,
knowing full well that I can't have them.
I guess you can't. Yeah, I guess you can't do that right now. I've got to go cut out sugar again. The best shape of my life was when I actually cut out sugar for like 4 years. I was in college, and it was really easy to do, and there was a detox period from it. And then once I detoxed from it, I didn't want it anymore. I didn't crave it anymore. But right now, I'm fully vested in the I have a sweet tooth mentality.
Mm-hmm.
and it's pretty difficult.
That's 100% accurate. So like right now, I don't really crave anything food related except for maybe steak.
Oh.
But I had that for lunch, so.
Nice. So, all right, we've talked a lot about everything else going on in life, about fitness and routines and how Simply Binary got started. What other projects do you have going on? I know you mentioned that you and Justin had created a few different businesses over the years. Do you want to talk about those at all, or anything that's in the works right now?
Yeah. So shortly after we moved here, we started working on a project with a few other people that we'd worked with in the past called CaptureLife. And it started out as a kind of reverse Instagram sort of deal, where it was a way to share photos and videos with your friends and family privately, rather than blasting everything out there publicly. And it quickly pivoted towards something with a business model because people didn't want to pay to actually do that, having Facebook and other mechanisms to share stuff. And so we ended up being a media distribution platform primarily for professional photographers. And then we got involved in the event space. You can find CaptureLife out at Sandals and Club Med and places like that. So we haven't been, we have still we still contract with the company that now owns CaptureLife, but we are no longer involved in like day-to-day decisions. So then after CaptureLife, we started working on Slipstream, which I've talked to you about at length. But for everyone else, it is a way to help you systemize your business operations. So we use it at Simply Binary, and it was kind of born out of the growth of Simply Binary, trying to figure out how to manage people and customer success and all of that sort of stuff. Generally you end up with systems for having a cadence for having one-on-ones with your employees or doing annual reviews and following up with customers and that sort of thing. So we made a place to create systems for ourselves, and we're working with a few companies to help them do that too.
I can certainly see the benefits of a tool like that. I know that we definitely talked about it at length. We had never got around to getting it set up, but I would like to. I do still want to explore that a little bit for my wife's business.
Awesome.
She's
Yeah,
got
we'd love to.
a business where she's got a lot of things that are being managed on a day-to-day basis,
Mm-hmm.
and there's different tools that are circulating different information from different places to with regard to what's being worked on. And I could absolutely see the benefits of a tool like this to help automate some of the communications that are there and the tooling that's there. So I'd love to learn more about this sometime.
Yeah, often when businesses start,
success?
Especially a service business like ours, you end up, unless you start it as an operator, which typically you either have to be very well off or have some other means of income to just start as an operator. Most people start a service business as the person that's actually delivering services and then grow from there. And so that's how we started. And it's really easy to get trapped in the delivery of services and just never end up working on the actual business. So Slipstream really helps you get your systems in place so that you can train other people to actually deliver services and more easily modify and create feedback loops and incorporate that feedback into the systems as you grow.
Nice. And so, do you have any advice that you'd want to share for starting these different businesses successfully? Is there a consistent pattern that you're seeing to the process that's involved with getting something off the ground like this?
Ooh. I wouldn't say that I have any sort of specific knowledge as to how to start a successful business. I don't feel like I've really had a like day one sort of success where we did everything right. What I can tell you is that if you work hard and you endure long enough, most things will work out and you'll pivot your way towards success. If you don't shut down, then you'll eventually, most likely, you'll become a legitimate business.
So
I am not.
Is there a key in there of trying to keep your operating budget small so that you can
Yes.
afford to stay around while you figure things out?
That certainly helps, and there's all kinds of different ways you can do that. So, like when Simply Binary started, I made sure that we had work lined up before I left my job. So, I'm not risk adverse and I'm not crazy risk seeking either. I'm somewhere in the middle. I think that tends to be a good place to be to start more like lifestyle size businesses. So yeah, having things lined up certainly helps before you go off on your own. I don't suggest just saving up money and then taking a crack at it. Certainly having a plan in place and a reasonable shot at executing against that plan will be helpful. And then once you're up and running, I like the philosophy of betting the barn, not the farm. So take take medium-sized bets frequently, but never put all your chips on the table. You don't want to go out of business.
I like that. Bet the barn, not the farm.
Yeah, that might be a Buffett quote.
That's a good line.
I'm not quite sure where it came from.
Well, wherever it came from, I really like it. I'm gonna have to look up the origin of that one. That's a good one. Solid advice. Essentially, just take meaningful steps forward. Just don't be reckless.
Yes.
But, nice. I like that. So let's see. We've covered a lot. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we wanted to talk about. You talk about systemization for your business, for your life. Is anything else that really comes up that you'd like to discuss while I've got you here?
I still get my hands dirty. I still really like tech and programming and writing software. So any of that is on the table to discuss. I'm still actively involved in projects. I do the account management piece. I'll join projects as a principal architect in various different platforms, frameworks, languages. So it's
any favorites?
Gosh, I think it's really important to approach projects thinking about what is the right tool for the job. If I'm building something where the customer size is either going to grow at a small, predictable pace, or it's never going to be super massive, then I'm probably going to reach for Ruby and Ruby on Rails every time. And the reason for that is just the productivity that you can get out of it, especially for me, because I've worked with it since 2006. So Rails 1, wow. Ruby 1.8 or whatever it was at the time. So I don't really have to look things up most of the time, except for the new Hotwire stuff. I tend to have to look that up a little bit, but everything else is just muscle memory, and it's just pure productivity. There's a lot of things, tooling, stuff like that. I might reach for Go, especially if I need to just be able to build a binary for a multi-platform sort of situation. That's really nice. You can just target this script to run on Windows or any flavor of Linux you can imagine. It's also got a great HTTP library built in, so standing up APIs in Go is just super, super easy. I'll usually bring in Gorilla Mux as a library just to have a little bit of routing sugar, but otherwise it's just all right there. You're just wiring up a route to a handler and handling requests.
Simple.
So CaptureLife ended up being all Go. It started as a Node project, and then it quickly got rewritten as we were just doing a massive volume of background processing and needed that stuff to go faster. Yeah,
I could see that. And it's, Go's definitely got some very strong facilities for concurrency, parallel work.
I have this 20-year-old chair that my father-in-law, that some dentist designed, and it's really an awesome chair. But it's getting old and it just starts deflating. So that's why I just sank after a couple or an hour or so of sitting, it'll just start going lower.
See, that's what I've been telling you about this bungee chair for forever. This thing, it doesn't deflate. It just kind of gives you some pressure in, and you never have to worry about a cushion flattening out over time. And I swear it's the best bargain in chairs that's out.
So this cushion is great. It's not the problem. It's the height.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
it won't hold
The actual
the height.
little hydraulic.
Yeah, the hydraulic is failing.
Okay.
But yeah, the bungee
All
chair
right.
is great.
Well,
I sat in yours.
I can't say anything about that. Nice. Well, all right. So you've talked a lot with with Go on those various projects. But it seems like you found a kind of a good routine with mostly Ruby and Go. Anything else that you find yourself reaching for?
Yeah, I think if we're building something that kind of more aligns with a real-time chat sort of situation, lots of persistent connections and lots of concurrent users, then we'll reach for something like Elixir, which is on top of Erlang, which is written for the telecom industry to really hold all of those persistent connections and have fault tolerance built in so that basically you never drop a call. That's the whole purpose. So keeping all of those connections held and being able to scale that in a fairly I guess I would consider Elixir pretty resource efficient. Maybe not quite as much as Go, but it's pretty resource efficient, and it can really scale to a massive concurrency level.
Yeah, as you know, I'm a giant Elixir fan, and the Beam itself, that the virtual machine that Erlang and Elixir run on top of, is a big reason for that. There's a lot of little trade-offs in the language in terms of how it lets you run things in parallel without the parallel functions stepping on any other's toes. Mm-hmm. So you can't have like an infinite loop take over the system and grind everything else to a halt, for example.
Right.
You'll get very consistent response times for everything that's on there. And if something is going to be very resource intensive, that part's going to actually take longer to run than everything else. But your response times across the board with all the other millions of things you might have going on in parallel will be consistent and virtually unaffected when you run something heavy. Mm-hmm. And it scales out very naturally as a functional language, because you can just, any function that you could just call on the machine, if you were to add a node to a cluster, you can call that same function on another node of the cluster, because there's nothing stored locally. It's just sending in the parameters and it's giving you back the result. And so it definitely makes the scale out piece really, really clean there as well, without having to set up a lot of intermediaries mm-hmm. to route information between, which is really cool. But I can do an entire episode just about Elixir, so I'm not going to do that at this point. I
love it. It's definitely it's a mindset shift for me that I have made at times where I was productive, but right now every time I jump into Elixir, I'm just less productive because I work with Ruby so frequently and think in an object-oriented way, and switching over to functional and also just having to look a lot of things up is annoying to me.
Yeah, I as much of an Elixir fan as I am, the productivity benefits of Ruby are really hard to deny. And if I'm working on a side project or something like that, being able to pull all the core components that I need together for a really polished result is just so much faster in Ruby than it is in anything else. And people who don't work in Ruby a lot don't really understand this as well. I try to explain it a lot. But if you've ever heard of aspect-oriented programming, mm-hmm. Ruby is the closest thing that I've seen to aspect-oriented programming in a natively in a language. And what aspect-oriented programming is the idea that you basically take a component that might have pieces spread throughout the application, and you have the ability to inject that into an application, and it just sort of runs. Mm-hmm. And the simplest example of that would be like a library for authentication, for example, where you might add a library for authentication. It needs to have routes to go to the login pages and log out pages. It needs to have HTML that gets displayed for those login and log out pages. It needs to connect to your database, no matter what it may be, to store users and know how to look up those users. It needs to have a piece and a layer around your session management to verify that to verify the user is actually logged in and maintain that across the user session across the board. And then at different parts of your application, you also need to be able to tie into it to find out who is this user that you're associating with different aspects of it. And from an aspect-oriented standpoint, that's covering a lot of different pieces of an application. It's not just some library that you make calls to. It has to literally become a part of your application. And with Ruby, you can pull in a library that can quite literally inject itself into all the places that it needs to go in your application. And Rails kind of provides a good structure for that, but the language itself, the malleability of the language to let you change the language to adapt to the needs of what you're doing, makes that much cleaner. And it's one of the reasons that the Rails or that the Ruby gem ecosystem is so powerful, because if you want to modify a gem that already exists, you can literally just write your modifications and have it and add that gem after the fact, and it can inject a new functionality on the other existing gem. So you get this great mishmash of almost upgradable behavior where you don't have to wait for the original library author to do it. And functional programming helps because you're making forced calls into things and it's not hidden behind abstraction layers. Ruby just makes it easier to get to those various abstraction layers to change them if you need to. And so it is a productivity trade-off that's hard to deny. And over time, it can become more complicated to maintain when people are trying to find their way around code base, for sure. But over time, it happens because you got to market and you were able to make money with it, and you were able to hire people that had to go and have the problem in the first place. Yeah. And that can't be said for a lot of things.
Having software that makes money, if you're in business, is the most important component.
Exactly. It doesn't matter how fast it is if nobody can ever use it.
Yeah, that mirrors my experience with working with Ruby. It is that malleability that really makes everything so productive, but it can be the gun that shoots you in the foot as well.
Yeah. You have to be careful with it.
Right. And there's just so many beyond that. Well, because of that, there's so many different ways to do the same thing in Ruby. And there's straightforward ways, there's multiple straightforward ways, and then there's multiple clever ways. And so avoiding cleverness when it's not needed or warranted is really important, especially when you're working with a team. So I find writing Ruby it's my favorite language to write in. It's one of my least favorite to read other people's stuff. Whereas I really like reading Python and Go, Elixir. Those are very intention revealing languages.
Okay. Now I got to admit, you're one of the first people that I've heard say that. So can you expand on that a little bit? Just in terms of the readability of the Python or the Go code versus the Ruby code.
So if you're reading a Rails project, there are conventionally enforced decisions. So Rails projects tend to follow the same pattern, but they can have wild deviations from Rails. But if you're just looking at pure Ruby, without any of those conventions kind of forcing like where code goes, you can have monkey patches wherever. So that's what I mean by it's not intention revealing. Like if you follow functional code, you can pretty much just follow it through and see everything that happens through the chain of events, as data is passed through the functions. With Ruby, you kind of have to know all of the code that's being loaded to know really what has happened, or interrogate the objects after they're built.
Yeah.
And also how it's done. You can monkey patch in like 5 different ways.
That is very true. That's very true. All right. Well, let's see. We are getting to just about time here. Anything you want to close out with?
I'm looking forward to the next code conference.
You and me both.
Yeah, we'll be there. We'll try to get everyone on our team there as well.
So by the time this episode runs, we may be done with our lyrical code challenge to find out what our song is going to be for the shirt this year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any bets for what you think is going to win?
What was the Bon Jovi song? I think I like that one.
Living on a Prayer.
Yeah. I think Living on a Prayer might take it.
All right.
That'd be a good one.
All right. If anyone's taking wagers, keep in mind that is Pete's.
Well, Barry,
now
I appreciate you having me.
Voting just started today, so as we're recording this, so we don't really have a lot in so far. But let's see. I'm going to see how it's going so far. Right now, yeah, it's doing good. It's in bracket 4, and it's got 29% of the vote, and the leader has 36% of the vote so far. So go get your votes in for that. All
Nice.
right. Thanks a lot for joining us today, Pete. It was great having you on. Learned a lot, and feel like I need to be a little more structured in my own life after this session. So thanks for that. But let me give everybody my normal weekly shout out here. Thanks to Herd Media for helping me get this podcast together. If you're ever looking to start a podcast, or you need some advice, or you want to delegate it out entirely to a company that can run the entire thing for you after you just do the initial interviews, feel free, and they will be happy to take care of you. Great people over there at Herd Media. This has been the Carolina Codecast.